Hey folks, it's Stardic Dan, and chances are you own one of these, and if you do own one of these, you probably want to take some photo and video of it, not just any photo, fantastic photo. So I'm going to teach you how to do that in today's video. Ready? Alright, so today I'm headed to a Sony event. Sony was kind enough to host this awesome event local in Dallas, and they had amazing gear there for people to try out and all the lenses that you can ever imagine. It was available, there were models, and so you can take some photos and video. So just a perfect time, just a perfect setting and time to talk about camera basics and stick to the end of the video. Even if you don't have a camera or any, big fancy camera, you can do the same exact thing on a smartphone. I'm gonna teach you how to do that. And I'm gonna try to do this with much voiceover as possible because they had loud music that was copyrighted, so I don't want to get a copyright strike. But with all that said, I'm super excited. Let's head into the venue. All right, I'm already meeting a bunch of creatives around here. There's Sydney with the YouTube channel. So immediately I got to meet Sydney and Matt. Sydney does content around cameras and especially Sony, so he's right at home. And Matt, he does some tech stuff along with wedding videos, so he's no stranger to cameras at all. Let's go ahead and switch over from my Pentax camera to the brand new Sony camera right now. Alright, well here's a Sony, and we have a 16 to 35 on here, and so it's a pretty wide lens, so we'll see what we can do with this. Alright, here's the 16 to 35 on the Sony. This is the Sony A7R III. I'm sure you're going to be noticing a lot of differences here. It's going to look very, very different. Here, there's going to be a ton of other, little booths and stuff like that, so we're going to go ahead and try to get some video of it, some little bit of stills, see what we can get out of it, right? Alright, so let's jump right into it. I want to mainly talk about two things in this video: framing and manual settings. If you can understand these two and just nail them, you're gonna have an incredible photo that's gonna impress all your friends. And Onewheel forums, because that's what we care about, right? So nothing to be scared about, big words, camera jargons. I'm gonna walk you through step by step. We're gonna start at the studio in the Sony event to talk about the basics and transfer this right over to capturing some rad Onewheel photos. Framing. All framing means is the way you capture a photo and how you place the subject in a photo. Our eyes always lead into some kind of direction when looking at a photo, so you want to direct the eyes directly to the subject. One important thing is to make sure there's no distractions in your frame. You have to think about what is all going on in your photo to get your subject to be the prominent figure at all times. Let's do a comparison. Here's a photo A, and here's photo B. All I did was crop in and got a little bit of a tighter framing. Makes a huge difference, right? Try starting with close-ups if you don't know what kind of framing you want to get at first. It's a really easy way to get some awesome photos. Nothing's gonna be a distraction from the subject, because literally the subject is taking so much of the photo real estate. Manual camera settings. Okay, let's talk about using manual camera settings, and using manual is going to unlock the best image quality you can ever get with either a smartphone or a camera, anything that really has manual control over that's a camera. And we're gonna transfer this right over to Onewheel photos. The best things come in three: throttle, brake, and clutch.
We're not talking about cars, we're talking about cameras right now.
Okay, let's try that again. The best things come in three: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. I'm gonna explain this in a really easy way. So let's start with ISO. So what all ISO is the sensitivity of the digital sensor, okay? So let's take that back to film days on old cameras, because it's basically the same concept. So let's just say that this paper here is a roll of film. The way a film camera works is literally a light source burns into the film and it creates that image. The way it creates that image is it's burning that light into the film. So here we have a light source. So let's just say that this light source here is the image, okay? So now I'm exposing my camera to the image, and when I do that, it starts catching on fire. And yep, that's on fire. I'm a professional idiot, guys. Don't try this at home, but you get the point. So now we have burned the image into the film. Get the point, right? So now let's say we have even a higher number of ISO film. So this thing is going to catch fire much more quickly. So to demonstrate that, do we need to demonstrate this? I think everybody gets the concept, but Okay, so now we have a more sensitive film And there we go. It burns much more quickly. So now you have a much brighter image, and an image is much brighter image. Yes, it burns quicker. Now here's the thing too. The more sensitive the film is, or the higher you put up the ISO, the more grain and more like impurities you're gonna get from the image. So it's gonna look a bit messier, more grainy, more noisy, and it's just not gonna look pretty. So you wanna keep the sensitivity as low as possible to the best of your ability. And it's kind of like your last resort of like, okay, I've tried everything else, but I still need more light. It's not sensitive enough, then I'm gonna raise up the ISO. All right, up next, let's talk about shutter speed. So remember when I said ISO is the sensitivity of the sensor or the film, and how the film or the sensor captures the image is letting the light burn through it. And so basically the shutter is like the gateway or the doorway to let the light in. The camera opens and closes the shutter for a determined amount of time, and the photographer can choose that amount of time in a manual setting as well. You can have it anywhere between 1/6000th of a second, which is incredibly fast, or you can have it up to like, even 30 seconds opening if you're doing like, say, star trail photography and you're trying to capture something that's extremely dark. So the longer the shutter is open, the more light it's going to let in, and the brighter the image is going to be. The faster the shutter is going to be, it's going to be a little bit darker, and the less light it's going to capture. But here's the thing too. If you have a subject that's moving and you want to capture that and freeze it inside a frame, then you have to raise the shutter speed high. Because while the duration of the shutter is open, that means the sensor is receiving an image. So if your subject is moving while the shutter is open, that means all that movement is being captured, which is going to be blurry. So if you notice, even taking photos with your phone, at nighttime or when it's really dark, you're going to get really blurry photos. That's because your phone is opening that shutter for a long time to compensate for less light. As compared to if you're in complete daylight and you're trying to take photos with your phone, you probably won't have any motion blur because the shutter speed is super high, and because there's a lot of light coming in, it has to compensate. That way also there's not too much light coming in from the bright sunlight, and all the image that you're going to get is just like this white image that's blown out. Alright, last one to talk about is aperture, also known as the iris. This is a really simple concept, and it applies to the lens of the camera. So if you have like a phone camera nowadays, if you hear the thing called dual aperture, basically that means that it has a 2 setting wide open and then closed down. So imagine like your iris on your eye, okay? And you know how when there's a lot of light, it closes down, and when it's dark, it opens up? It's the same concept with the lens. When the lens is wide open, you're gonna get more light, and when it's closed down, you're gonna get less light. Just as simple as that. The only thing that's complicated about aperture is that when it's wide open, you get the most depth of field, meaning you get background separation from the subject. So you know how in some photos the subject is in focus and the background is like super blurred out? Just like this one here. And the reason is because the aperture is wide open, and that does that effect. Now you can achieve the very same effect by getting really close to the subject, and both of them does the same thing. So you can even combine both of them to get the maximum amount of background separation to the subject and get a blurry background. Also, the focal length of a lens can affect this, but that's a bit of a more technical detail, so we can maybe cover that in another video if you guys are interested. Alright, I feel like I've been talking for way too long. We've been talking about too much technical detail, so now that we covered everything, let's go ahead and go out to a field and start shooting some amazing Onewheel photos. Testing exposure, that is super bright, oh my gosh. Alright, so now I'm out in a park and we're going to do some photography. We're going to take everything that we've been talking about. It's all been in theory, so let's put it into practice and see what photos we can get with the correct manual settings and the correct framing that we were talking about. Now, a few things to know. We're going to be shooting in TV mode, and it's going to make things a lot easier. What that is a shutter priority mode. What that means is you're going to set your shutter manually, and your camera is going to do the rest of the job on its own, and it's going to just kind of like automatically calculate what it needs to do. The reason why we're doing that is because we want a low shutter speed to blur the background and have the subject in focus, all right? I also have a friend here that, he doesn't even know what's going on here, and so I'm gonna let him try to take some photos and see if he can nail it on the first try and with the correct settings. So we're gonna have trying it out. That's not just me that already knows how to do it, so it should be a pretty good, I guess, benchmark. So yeah. Alright, let me walk you through the settings real quick before we start shooting. So the shutter speed that I was referring to earlier, you need to set that to either 1/125th or 1/160th. That's going to be the sweet spot, and 1/125th is going to be a little bit more difficult than 1/160th. So try starting with 1/160th and then drop down to 1/125th if you are starting to get some nice photos. Now, basically the concept of this is you need to track the subject, track the Onewheel as it's passing by, and you're panning with it. So you want to match your panning speed of the camera to the Onewheel exactly. And what that will do is, because we're running on a slower shutter speed, the panning speed is going to match the subject speed, meaning to the camera, the subject is the only thing that's actually not moving. Isn't that crazy? That's kind of like relativity type stuff. And since the background is the only thing that's moving now to the camera, the background is going to be blurred out and the subject is going to be super tack sharp in focus. Last thing you need to know is you just need to hold down the shutter on burst mode. So as you're panning and tracking the subject, just keep the shutter going. So just go click, 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 and that'll get you the best opportunity to get that blurred out background and tack sharp subject, Onewheel, and amazing photo. Okay, so one of the easier ways to do this, because some cameras don't have good autofocus and some have really excellent autofocus. So if you do have really good autofocus, what you want to do is put it on AFC mode, which is autofocus continuous mode, which means that it's going to continually autofocus while you're holding the shutter down. Now, for my camera, it doesn't have a really good AFC. So what I'm going to do is manually focus this. What this means is I'm going to set the manual focus point. So Seth's going to place the Onewheel right there, and I'm going to set the manual focus to exact that position right there. So when I hit the shutter, it's going to be in focus when he comes into that position and I start clicking the shutter. Another quick tip too, this type of photography, action photography, works really well when the subject takes most of the frame. So it fills up the frame. So when I was taking pictures of Seth and the Onewheel, it was a bit harder to track, but when I have just the Onewheel and do a close-up on the Onewheel, it's going to be a lot easier to get that clean photo. And don't get discouraged if you can't get this in the second or the third try, because this is all about trial and error. This type of photography, you just got to keep shooting and keep trying. It's a bit of an advanced technique, but I hope with this video it's dumbed down enough so that everyone can try it. Speaking of which, let's see what Seth can do with this thing. Alright, I'm gonna go over the smartphone photography real quick. I mean, it's gonna be super easy because it's basically all the same thing. All we're gonna do is hop over to Pro mode, and on Pro mode, it's gonna allow you to go into manual settings. So you're gonna go ahead and change the shutter speed, and I'm gonna set that to 1/180th. You can set it around 1/160th to 1/180th, but the thing about smartphones is that they don't have a really variable aperture, so it's gonna be super bright. So you can do one thing or the other. You can either find a shade or get an ND filter, which is like sunglasses for your lenses, except it's for your phone. And so there's a few available on like eBay and stuff like that. But what I would suggest is find a shade like I did right here. That way you're not in direct sunlight and it doesn't over blow out everything like this photo. But yeah, I was running out of time, so I couldn't make a lot of photos with the smartphone, but the quality of photos that you can get with smartphone nowadays is pretty up there. The phone that I was using was an S7 Edge, so it's a few years old, but with a flagship phone that you can get nowadays, I mean, you're bound to get some really banger photos. A quick tip too is you can zoom in slightly. When you zoom in a little bit, it's going to give you better depth of field. Don't zoom in too much because that's going to lower your quality, but you can zoom in about maybe 2x to maybe a little bit more. And some phones have like, you know, telephoto lens nowadays, so you can use that. All right, I don't know about y'all, but I think those photos turned out really, really great. So if you guys try this and you guys get some awesome photos, tag me on Instagram. I need to be more active on Instagram, but I'll link it down below, and I love to see them, love to check them out. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to help you out and answer any questions you got about photography. But yeah, if you are seeing this video right now, I should be in Vid Summit right now in Los Angeles, California. I made this ahead of time. Actually, this is like the day before travel day, so I need to actually be packing. I should probably get to packing. I also need to edit this footage. It's a mess. So hopefully I do make it to Vid Summit. But it was super fun making this video. I loved making it. And if you guys liked it too, please let me know down in the comments below if you'd like to see more content like this on how to make videos maybe next time. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know. I'll definitely do that. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Again, if you do try this photography method and you get some banger photos, come on, tag me. I'd love to see them. I'll see you guys later in the next video. Peace.